ओम अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनच्छलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेशा गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी शुभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय पादाय कृष्ण प्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमती भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारणे निर्विशेष निवादिताश्च तम कृति वाचाल पंगुम लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्री गुरुं दीनतारणं परमानंद माधवं श्री चैतन्य। ओम तत्सत्। Hare Krishna. So welcome everyone to the Bhagavatam discussion. So we are starting with Canto 3, Chapter 1, Questions by Vidura. So the previous chapter and the previous canto ended by Suta Goswami being asked by Shaunak and the other sages, please tell us more. Can you tell us about what was the discussion between Vidura and Maitreya? Because we heard that there were a lot of interesting spiritual subjects discussed there. And Shukdev Goswami is very happy to hear that. And he says, yes. Suta Goswami is very happy to hear that. He says, yes. And he says, that was precisely what Parikshit Maharaj asked Shukadev Goswami. So you have asked the exact same question. So let me tell you what Shukadev Goswami said and how he replied to this very apt topic. So Shukdev Goswami actually starts this chapter by saying that Vidura, he renounced his home. What kind of home? He was actually practically, for all practical purposes, a member of the extended royal family. Even though he was a Dasiputra, but he was a step brother to Dhritarashtra and Pandu and others. So he was very close and part of the family. Of course, he had his own house, he had his own palace. But nonetheless, he was very much a part of the Kurus. And Shukdev Goswami mentioned to Parikshit Maharaj that he renounced that prosperous that prosperous, not just the kingdom, but that prosperous home, that palatial facilities. And this was not just about for him to renounce, just another family. It was not renouncing just another home. The place that he renounced was actually the home of the Pandavas. And who are these Pandavas? The Pandavas were treated by Lord Krishna as such close associates. Of course, the Lord is the Lord of everything, but even then, he acted like a personal counselor to the Pandavas, like a minister. the word minister, the mantrana, means to give counsel, to give advice. So minister, mantri. The word used here is mantra, mantra in the sense of not the chanting mantra, but mantrana in the sense of one who gives advice. So the Lord would give advice to the Pandavas. They were so close. And the Lord treated the Pandavas as so close. The Lord would treat the home of the Pandavas as if it was, their own home. He treated the house of Vidura like his own home. In fact, whenever Lord Krishna would come, he was never interested in going to Duryodhana's palace, but he was interested always in visiting the Pandavas and especially in spending time in the house of Vidura, because Vidura is such a great devotee. He didn't bother about Duryodhana. Duryodhana ka meva tyago shag vidurgar khayo. You know that favorite pastime, a very beautiful pastime of how the Lord rejected the huge feast being cooked by Duryodhana and he accepted the lunch offer in the house of Vidura, where Vidurani actually offered banana peel to Krishna instead of the banana. Out of her intense love for the Lord, she actually peeled the banana and she threw the banana and without realizing, she accidentally gave the peel to Lord Krishna to eat. And the Lord very happily accepted it because it was offered with such love. So such a home Vidura gave up. There must be something special. So after he actually spoke like this, Sukadeva Goswami spoke like this to Parikshit Maharaj, because actually wherever the Lord is and wherever the Lord's devotees are, that place is practically like Vrindavan. So why did actually he go away? So Maharaj Parikshit became curious and he started asking, and he said, okay, fine, please tell me where and when this discussion between Vidura and Maitreya Muni happened. Please describe all of this in detail. So he was interested in the details also, because there are certain interesting episodes which happened between the time of Vidura's leaving his home and his meeting Maitreya Muni. So this chapter is actually going to describe that part of the story. So as soon as he started this, his journey, there were some very sweet episodes which happened. So Parikshit Maharaj wants to know that also, and he tells Shukadev Goswami, mentions that I want to specifically hear about that, but I want to hear all the details and tell me all that happened. But of course, I'm especially interested in the conversation between Vidura and Maitreya, because Vidura is such a great, pure devotee of the Lord. And Maitreya Rishi is also such a realized person. So obviously, when they met and they spoke, they must have discussed on the topmost things. Obviously, they did not get together and discuss politics. They didn't come together and discuss about the war or about all other things. They knew that when two great souls come together, they are relishing discussion on the subjects of Krishna. And sometimes when great souls meet each other, and because of certain social considerations, age considerations, one party may treat another party as senior, and one party may take a position as a junior. By the end of the day, as far as spiritual discussions are concerned, both the speaker, the questioner, as well as the listener, all of them are benefited. There is no difference, and it is sweet to all those who are actually involved. The same thing is true for Bhagavad. The same thing is true for Bhagavad Gita. Even if we are not speaking, if we are listening and hearing properly, that is perfect. If we are able to ask good questions, that is wonderful. But even if we are not able to ask good questions, if we listen to the good questions and the good answers, that is also perfect. As long as we are somehow or the other connected with Harikatha, that is always perfect. And this is the perfect subject to discuss about. The perfect subject is about discussing about the process of devotional service to the Supreme Personality of God. In fact, the whole yoga process are actually just nothing but stepping stone towards pure devotion. A person who is very attached may start on the platform of karma, but gradually as he increases in his affinity to the Lord, he graduates from karma to karma yoga, and then he slowly goes higher and higher. And as he increases in his devotion and detachment, gradually goes from karma yoga to jnana yoga to ashtanga yoga to. Of course, those who are very fortunate get the association of pure devotees right from the beginning, and they immediately develop faith in the process of pure devotional service and directly take to the process of sadhana bhakti. And in that way, they also make progress. In fact, they make much more rapid progress than those who take the gradual path. But at the end of the day, spiritual life is nourished by such active questioning and active discussion. This is actually the symptom of somebody who is actually serious about spiritual life. They are eager to understand more and more, and they are eager to hear more and more. And it is not that after I know the answer, I don't want to hear about it. That is not the nature of spiritual life. Is it that whatever Vidura asked to Maitreya, he had no clue about and that's why he asked? It's not like that. Sometimes when we are sitting in a class, we see one sannyasi asking a question to another guru and sannyasi. Does it mean that the first sannyasi is asking a question doesn't know the answer? Not necessarily. The reason why devotees sometimes even after knowing the answer may ask the question to other elevated souls is because when other elevated souls speak even on the same topic, because Krishna is unlimited and topics related to Krishna is unlimited, so much sweet realizations of the devotees come up in such discussions. And actually, for any question, there is no limit to how much it can be answered. That is the nature of spiritual questions. Spiritual questions, it's not that, okay, this is answer is given and now there's nothing more to be said about this question. That is not true. One can go on speaking unlimitedly about any question about spiritual life. Because Krishna is unlimited, everything about him is unlimited. You take any aspect of Krishna, you can speak unlimited about it. So we may not be able to conceive this materially, but the point is that when the great soul speaks about it, even though one may have his own understanding, our own understanding gets nourished, enhanced by hearing the realizations, the different perspectives of the various great souls. So that is one thing. And also, there is so much sweet spiritual experience. There is so much beautiful spiritual ras when Harikatha is discussed. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, right? Kathayantascha mam nityam tushyanti cha ravanti cha. That the great souls, they enjoy discussing about me. And in that discussion, they find spiritual pleasure as well as full satisfaction. So after this was mentioned with respect to Shukadeva Goswami speaking to Parikshit Maharaj, Suta Goswami, because this conversation is being narrated by Suta Goswami, Suta Goswami asks, Suta Goswami says that after being questioned like this by and commented like this by uh, Parikshit Maharaj, Shukdev Goswami was actually very, very happy. He was happy by seeing how eager the king was to hear. And then he said, please listen, I will narrate these topics in detail. And then Shukadev Goswami, rather than directly going into the conversation between Vidura and Maitreya, starts narrating about Vidura's leaving home. Because in the first canto, the basic pastime of Vidura leaves home has been described. And he is continuing from there onwards and going in detail. So, most of this chapter or the remaining part of this chapter is actually the description of Vidura's leaving home and what happened after he left home and his meeting with another great devotee whose name is Uddhava. So there is a very beautiful meeting between Uddhav and Vidura, in which also there is a very, very beautiful conversation. So the first couple of chapters of the third canto are actually dedicated to the discussion between Vidura and Uddhava. And later, the conversation between Vidura and Maitreya happens. Because even before Vidura meets Maitreya Muni, he actually meets Uddhav. So if you recollect, both Vidura and Uddhav, they left on pilgrimages. The story of Vidura is being described here, and Uddhav's story we have already discussed earlier, how Uddhav was actually requested by the Lord to go and meet the sages in Badrikashram and give them his association. How do the sages get the association of Krishna? Because when the sages associate with those who is an associate of Krishna, they feel actually as if Krishna is personally present. So, that is the nature of the presence of a pure devotee. When a pure devotee interacts with us, because he is so dear to the Lord, we actually feel as if the Lord is actually personally interacting with us. In fact, the pure devotee carries Lord Krishna in his heart. And when he travels, he is carrying Lord Krishna in the heart. So when he interacts with sadhakas like us, we feel Krishna's presence in the association of these great devotees. So, Shukadev Goswami starts narrating that, see, Vidura actually was the half brother of Dhritarashtra. So I'm going to narrate the story in brief. We have discussed this a bit earlier, so I'm not going to go into a lot of details. But for your information, Vidura was the half brother. Of course, Dhritarashtra, Pandu, as well as Vidura, they were actually under the instructions of Satyavati, conceived by Vyasadeva. So it is said that Ambalika, when she was approached by Vyasa, she was so repelled by the not so good looking physical features of Vyasa that she actually put in front her maid, whose name was Parishrami, and she backed out. And it is said that in the womb of this Parishrami was conceived Vidura. So Vidura actually being also conceived by Vyasa, as was Dhritarashtra and Pandu. They were all, in that sense, brothers. And even though Vidura, he was in one sense a Dasi Putra, but still he had that bloodline. So he wasn't fully considered as a part of the royal family directly, because a Dasi Putra is not given the same rights and privileges as those who are directly children in the royal family. But nonetheless, they are given all facility and they are treated definitely in a special way. They are brought up like a prince, but not they are not given the position and the rights of a prince, something like that. So Vidura was always in the scene, and Vidura was from his very childhood always showing a very great saintly disposition, very saintly person, and very, very attached to the Supreme Personality of God. If you remember, we had narrated this story. I don't know how many of you attended that class, but just to quickly remind you that Vidura actually is none other than Yamaraj, who incarnates in this world. Why? Normally, Yamaraj, everybody is very afraid of Yamaraj. If somebody tells us, oh, Yamaraj is going to come and meet you, we say, no, please cancel the appointment. I don't want to meet him. Because usually the understanding is meeting Yamaraj means I am dying. That's why Yamaraj is meeting me. Of course, while Yamaraj has that particular seva to render on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he does it as a seva. Many of these devatas do various sevas, and sometimes we don't like their seva, but that is still a seva which is dear to the Lord. The seva which Durga Devi performs of punishing the living entities, and the seva that some other demigods perform. Sometimes Shani Dev performs. Everybody is scared of Shani and doesn't want to see him. He is doing his seva on behalf of the Lord, because all these punishments are necessary to rectify the faulty mentality of the living entity. So Yamaraj is doing a service, but in his heart, he's not a cruel, sinister person. In fact, he's a fully self-realized great devotee of the Lord. In fact, he doesn't even enjoy doing what he does, because great devotees don't enjoy that kind of a service. They do it as a service to the Lord, but that is not what they love. What do they love? They love simply, like all other devotees, to be in the association of the Lord and the devotees and just hear and chant his glories. So a special arrangement was made. That's a long story. I'll not go into that. We have discussed that earlier in one of the other classes. The arrangement was made that Yamaraj comes down to earth in this particular form. And I think it was Aryama who actually takes over the position in his absence. And he comes and spends this lifetime here. And when he comes, he's given birth in this particular family, in a very humble position in one sense. Of course, in a great situation, but in a relatively humble position. Where because he's a Dasi Putra, he's not respected as much as the others. But nonetheless, he is not bothered. He is very happy to be connected with the great devotees. He is surrounded by Bhishma, the Pandavas, and so many times Lord Krishna personally coming there. Kunti Devi, these are all pure devotees. So that is the greatest blessing for a pure devotee, to have the association of other pure devotees. In that sense, he is very, very happy. And being a very elevated, exalted soul, those are very elevated, exalted souls, they are nirmatsara, they are non-envious. And Vidura, like all other great souls, was not just non-envious, he was actually a genuine well-wisher of all living entities. Just like Krishna is the well-wisher of all living entities, Those who are pure devotees of the Lord on behalf of the Lord are also well wishers of everyone. So even though Dhritarashtra, his half brother, was actually so envious and crooked, and Vidura could clearly see it, nonetheless, Vidura always was hopeful and kind and kept on giving him good advice. Dhritarashtra, even though he had all opportunity to become a great devotee, all opportunities, yes, he had Vidura, he had Bhishma, all pure devotees around him. Kunti Devi, all great devotees. But he was so blinded because of his uncontrolled material desires, especially his sinful desire to protect his dishonest children. And he went to so much extent that he became actually an enemy of his own nephews, the Pandavas. The Pandavas were the sons of his half-brother Pandu. Pandu was the king, but then he passed away in the forest, and his children were very young. The 5 Pandavas were very young, and they were brought to Hastinapur. And Dhritarashtra was supposed to take care of the kingdom as a caretaker until the Pandavas grew up. But he was so attached to the kingdom that he wanted somehow or the other to hand over the kingdom to Duryodhan and to support. And Duryodhan himself also wanted the same thing. And with that end in mind, they conspired so many times against the Pandavas. One of the most famous episodes is trying to put on fire, or actually putting on fire, the house of Lak. So Dhritarashtra was not just blind physically, because he was not given the kingdom because he was blind physically, but he was more than that, he was blind spiritually. When one is too much attached, Bhogaishwarya prasaktanam taya aparita chetasam, when one becomes too much attached to Bhoga and Aishwarya, to enjoyment and opulence, like what Dhritarashtra and Duryodhan became, taya aparita chetasam, one's intelligence is stolen away, doesn't understand what is right, what is wrong. So much moha is there, so much illusion is there, one does all kinds of nonsense. Even to the extent that even when Duryodhan, Dushyasan were trying to disrobe Draupadi, even at that time, Dhritarashtra did not forbid his own children. Even to that extent, because he wanted the kingdom at all costs. And Yudhishthira, on the other hand, was so noble, so devoted, that in spite of being treated with such trickery, with so much unfairness, where Shakuni actually tricked by using a charmed dice, he still obeyed and he still went to the forest. He lost all his kingdom. He was insulted, but he still went to the forest because he was promised, go to the forest. When you come back, Dhritarashtra had said, I will give you half the kingdom. But when he came back, in spite of giving the word, Dhritarashtra again went back on his word, again being unfair. And he denied the kingdom to the Pandavas. Pandavas had no choice. They were Kshatriyas. A Kshatriya, a true Kshatriya, cannot apply for a job and, go and, join a corporate and, then start doing some clerical work. No, that is not their nature. The Varnashram system was followed so strictly. A person who has one nature would always perform activities according to that nature, and that is the right thing, because then only that person can actually be happy performing that kind of a seva. So the Pandavas needed a kingdom for their subsistence. And that is why they had to be given a kingdom. So they tried in all ways to try to reason out. Arjuna went to the point of requesting Krishna. Even though Krishna is the master of the whole universe, Krishna took the position of a messenger on behalf of the Pandavas, and he went and spoke in the assembly of the Kurus, trying to put some good sense into Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana. Great souls like Bhishma who were there, they understood and they relished what Krishna said, because Krishna gave perfect wisdom. And he told them very clearly, this is right, and if you don't do, what will happen? Everything was laid out bare very clearly by the Lord. But the problem is, those who are bereft of higher consciousness, those who are bereft of good deeds, even if God personally comes and speaks, it doesn't have much effect. Actually, sometimes some of us feel, oh, only if God was here and God comes and personally tells me something and says, you do this, then I will do. I don't want to hear something from the Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavad, or why this Prabhuji is telling me something, what Krishna said. I want Krishna to come and personally tell me. But the reality is, of course, we are not so qualified, but even if that were to happen, if we are not sufficiently spiritually purified, we cannot take the words of Krishna seriously. Because actually, spiritually, there is no difference between the Gita, Bhagavad, and Krishna coming and telling us something personally. Because Krishna has already told, not just to Arjuna, but to all living entities through the Bhagavad Gita. Aren't Krishna's words in the Gita direct instructions to us also? Yes, they are. We cannot be so proud and puffed up that we think we are so qualified that God has to personally come. Correct? It's just like saying, for those of us who are in Malaysia, it's just like saying, when the MCO order comes, recently again an MCO, conditional MCO was issued in certain parts of Malaysia. Yes, and many of us will come to know by reading something on Twitter or hearing the news or in the newspaper. But some extra smart people will say, no, I don't accept this. The Prime Minister must personally come and tell me that from tomorrow onwards, there is conditional MCO. Otherwise, I will not listen. Is there actually a difference between the Prime Minister directly speaking to us or whether he's issuing a notification through the authorized government departments or tweeting through his official Twitter handle? Actually not. It's the same, isn't it? It's just taking different forms. But such foolishness, if we become so egoistic, actually is going to only hurt us. But ultimately, the point is that doesn't matter, even if the Lord came personally, if we are not mature. Ravan, Lord Ramchandra personally gave him advice. Hanumanji personally gave him advice. Vibhishan personally gave him advice. Mandodari personally gave him advice. He received advice from everybody. But good sense didn't prevail. Because when one is too attached, when one is too egoistic, the mind, the ego will trick one into justifying how I am right and how the other person is wrong. So it doesn't matter who speaks. If one's ego is too big and if one's attachment is too big, one will not be able to take spiritual instructions seriously. So Dhritarashtra did not. Duryodhana did not. Even though the Lord was very clear that it will lead to total destruction of the Kuru dynasty. And not just that, he went to the extent, Duryodhana didn't stop there. Duryodhana went to the extent of trying to arrest Lord Krishna in that assembly. The Lord showed a mini Vishwarupa in that situation. But even after that, Duryodhan and Dhritarashtra didn't have any good sense. That is the sad part. Of course, the words and the instructions of the Lord are always pure and sweet, but the problem is if we are diseased, if we are having jaundice, then even the sweet sugarcane juice of the words of the Lord will also taste bitter to us. The problem is never in the Lord or His message. The problem is in our consciousness that we are unable to relish and understand the Lord's message. So when this episode happened, that Krishna spoke like this and the whole, and the whole fiasco happened, where Duryodhana, rather than listening, actually tried to capture Krishna, and Krishna finally walked away after showing his Vishwarupa and saying that now it is going to be war. At that time, after that episode, Dhritarashtra summoned for Vidura for consultation. So Vidura came into the personal quarters of Dhritarashtra. At that time, Duryodhana was there, Shakuni was there, and the other brothers of Duryodhana, Dushasana and others were there. Dhritarashtra would often take counsel or advice from Vidura. Vidura was very expert, Vidura Niti. And just like Chanakya is considered very, very expert in diplomacy and dharma. Vidura at that time was considered the topmost authority on proper behavior in politics and morality. So, Dhritarashtra sought the advice of Vidura. And Vidura was a genuine well-wisher of the Pandavas, of not just the Pandavas, but Dhritarashtra, Duryodhana, everybody. He was not a sycophant that he just wanted to please Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra. He wanted to give them good advice. So he was very, very honest, brutally honest. He was so clear and he told Dhritarashtra very straight and directly in front of Duryodhana and Karna. Karna was also there. That Yudhishthir has already suffered so much because of all these offenses that have been done to him. And so much offense has been done to him that he and his brothers, especially Bhima, they are so angry, so angry. They have already taken vows to kill Duryodhana, Dushasan. Bhima is waiting like an angry snake waiting to bite. You know that. Aren't you afraid? Can't you see what is about to happen? Do you think you can run away from this situation when these great, powerful personalities have actually taken vows? And you know that when Kshatriyas take vows, they don't say, no, that day I was a bit angry, so it was okay. No, once a vow is taken, a vow is taken. And don't you know, Dhritarashtra, that the Pandavas are not alone. Lord Krishna is with them. The Lord treats them like his family members. How do you think you are going to counter this, O Maharaj Dhritarashtra? So it is going to be very, very difficult. And who is this Krishna? This is the Krishna who, along with the Pandavas, this Krishna has killed Kamsa, and along with the Pandavas, he has defeated great, powerful warriors like Jarasandha. Krishna has defeated Brahma, Indra. He has the full power of the whole universe behind him. What do you think you are trying to do? Do you think you have any chance in this game? Can't you see you are headed towards destruction? And then he turns towards Duryodhana and pointing straight to Duryodhana, he tells Dhritarashtra, you have got into this mess because you are maintaining in your own house offense personified. And who's that offense personified? This Duryodhana. He was very blunt. In front of Duryodhana, he's telling Dhritarashtra, This person is offense personified. He's committing offense at every step. Actually, you all are also related to Lord Krishna. You could have also got the favor of Lord Krishna, but what to do? This Duryodhana is so envious. He's envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead also. And because Dhritarashtra, you are maintaining and taking care of such an offensive, envious, materialistic person, such a non-devotee as Duryodhan, you have lost all your auspicious qualities. There's also an important lesson. If we protect those who are adharmic, we also become implicated. If we protect and nourish those who are envious of the Lord, we also become implicated. We also lose our good qualities. Association is very important. Sometimes we think, oh, I will just be behind the scenes. Some people think, I will be goody. I'll be behind the scenes. Behind the scenes, I will engineer everything. But in the front, I'm going to be goody, very nice person. Yes, we may be able to trick some people by this kind of a diplomatic behavior. But this kind of a situation will actually simply cause us to lose our good qualities. So, please, my request to you, Vidura is telling Dhritarashtra, you should relieve yourself from this great burden that you have been carrying on your head and on the head of your family. And this is the only way you can do good to your family. Actually, in Sanskrit, a son is known as apatya. Apatya means apatya, he who stops the father from falling down. The son is given a lot of importance in the scriptures because the children, they perform the Shraddha rituals for the parents. So that if accidentally, for whatever reason, the father, the mother, they go into a difficult situation after their death, through the great good qualities and the observance of proper devotional rituals by the children, the parents can be delivered. But in this case, it was exactly opposite. Duryodhan was such a sinful, envious person. Rather than helping Dhritarashtra to go up, he was dragging Dhritarashtra down. So Vidura said, this person is not an apatya in that sense. He is actually your enemy. So sometimes in our culture, it is said if the son is actually very useless, very sinful, very really a burden to the family, then the saying is that, oh, your previous life's enemy has come as your son. That is how they will say. Even Chanakya Pandit would say, he would say, if a son is neither a great devotee nor a learned man, how is he of any good? It is practically from a spiritual perspective useless. So Duryodhana was like that. He was blind. He was spiritually fully blind. And Vidura was saying, because you are maintaining him, you have got into this situation. So when Vidura practically told Dhritarashtra straight in the presence of Duryodhana that my advice to you is, don't go against the Pandavas, you rectify your son on your side, and the only way he can be rectified is by plucking this thorn out and throwing it away. He literally told Dhritarashtra in front of Duryodhana that get rid of Duryodhana. Otherwise, you are finished. Can you imagine? Duryodhana is hearing this. He was wild with rage. And when a person becomes wild with rage, what does he do? He starts looking for faults in the other person. This is what happens, right? You see some fault, you get angry, then you try to look at something from the other person, then you try to magnify it so much. Duryodhan becomes so angry, his lips were trembling with anger. Karna was there, Shakuni was there, uh, uh, Dushasan was there. He couldn't tolerate his anger. He started abusing Vidura, calling him the son of a kept mistress, a Dasi Putra. Very insulting. And he also accused him, we are feeding you, but you are actually a spy on behalf of the Pandavas. And you are actually, rather than helping us, you are actually going against us. He couldn't appreciate, Duryodhan couldn't see the point that Vidura was trying to make. Just like Ravana couldn't see the point what Vibhishan was trying to say, and he banished Vibhishan. Same way here, Duryodhan banished Vidur. He said, throw this person out of the palace immediately and strip him of everything else other than his breath. That is how he was feeling. He was so angry. Other than his breath, strip away everything from him. So of course, he was his uncle, so he couldn't tell him that kill him. Otherwise, he would have probably done that. But he was so angry. He was so angry. Duryodhana was probably feeling that he wanted to beat up Vidura at that particular situation. And Dhritarashtra was quiet as all these things were happening. So when Vidura realized that Dhritarashtra is not listening to his good advice, Duryodhan and the others are not listening to his good advice. Forget about listening to good advice. They are actually retaliating in such harsh ways. And it was only going to be a matter of time. Now he was speaking of throwing him away. Maybe they may even become physically violent towards him. They had tried to kill the Pandavas earlier, so why would they not try to kill Vidura now? So Vidura actually was personally very hurt in his heart. Hurt not just because of material reasons, but he was feeling very sad that this was happening. And what did he do? He didn't wait for Dhritarashtra to throw him out. He just placed, being insulted like this, he just placed his bow on the door and he quietly walked away from the palace. Because Vidura was thinking in his heart that if this is what is going to happen, all this must be the supreme will of the Lord. This whole awkward situation has come about by the arrangement of the material energy. Prakritehe kriyamanani gunaihi karmani sarvashah ahankar vimudatma kartaham iti manate. All these situations are coming out. They are the result of so much karma and so much contamination that is there in the hearts of all these people involved. It is now beyond my power to rectify. Whatever is destined to happen, I have tried my best. Now I have to leave the rest. And beyond that, Vidura was also thinking, he understood that Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra are not going to understand. And he didn't want to continue in that very insulting and embarrassing situation. But at the same time, he was also thinking, because Vidura, he is Yamraj, he has come there not for all these politics. He was thinking, I am looking for an opportunity to associate with devotees and discuss Harikatha, and I'm just got trapped in all this nonsense. Why not take this opportunity? Anyway, nobody wants me here in Hastinapur. I tried to do my duty to the best of my ability. Nobody wants me. So let me also take this opportunity and give up this unworthy situation and let me go and take the association of saintly people. He understood Dhritarashtra is going towards ruination. Nothing I can do. So before Duryodhan could actually throw him out, he himself walked away. because he understood that at one level, even though the Lord's external energy was acting, internally Vidur knew that this external energy is also triggering an internal purpose for him, which is to bring him closer to the Lord by pushing him in the direction of taking association. So Vidura actually, the verse is Gatav Vyatha. He was not actually sorry about it. He took it positively. He took that difficult, insulting situation positively. He said, let me take advantage of this situation. So he left Hastinapur and he set out on a pilgrimage. He traveled numerous places of pilgrimages across the Bharatvarsha. So that is what great saintly people want to do. He was thinking, I have been in this political environment for so long. And when you are in a political environment, even though you are saintly, some or the other, some dirt will sprinkle, isn't it? Can we be in a political environment and be totally untouched? Very difficult. So even though Vidura is such a great soul, he never deviated from Dharma, but he was thinking, I've been in such a contaminating environment. I need to purify myself from this contaminating association that I've had with Duryodhan, Dhritarashtra and others. Let me go on a pilgrimage. This is what saintly people do. Saintly people go to places of pilgrimage to purify themselves. Because places of pilgrimage, tirtha, they have such strong spiritual potency that whenever we visit those places, we can actually become purified of our materialistic attachments. It's not just that we are purified simply by going to that place. Of course, the Lord's pastimes have been performed there. There are the Archa Vigraha, the divine forms of the Lord who are manifested in these holy places. And that way we can get purified by seeing these holy forms of the Lord in these holy places. That is another way we are purified, by taking bath in the holy places. But most important of all, when the Tirtha Yatris, the pilgrims, when they visit the Tirtha Sthala, the most important association they seek is that of other great pure souls who are residing in those holy places. So Vidura was not just visiting the temples in the holy places. He was associating with the sadhus in those holy places. And that is why, and that is how he eventually came to meet Maitreya Muni. Of course, that story comes a little later. But that is how we should look at visiting holy places. Sadly, we see many people who visit holy places. They just take a van, a bus, nice, comfortable mode of travel. They drive to the holy place. They go into the temple, hold hand in front of the Murti of the Lord for a few moments, put some donation. Practically within 5-10 minutes, after asking whatever they want from the Lord, give me this, give me this, give me this, give me this. I have done you such a big favor by coming all this way to visit you in these holy places. That is how often people pray. They may not say it like that to the Lord, but that is how the feeling is in the heart. God, I have taken so much trouble to come here in my busy schedule to come and see you. So please compensate me by giving me A, B, C, D, E. If you reflect deeply in our hearts, perhaps many of us may see such a tendency in our own hearts to different extent. And then they step out. They immediately go to the nearest restaurant, have a nice meal, and run away from the holy place as soon as they can and get back to their material business, waiting for the Lord to deliver the package of all that they have asked. But when we go to holy places, our purpose is not just to take darshan and bath, but to sit down in the association of saintly people and discuss Hari Katha. That is why when we go on yatras to the holy dhams, we don't just take darshan. More important than seeing Krishna with the eye is to see Krishna through the ears. That means by listening. Harikatha, in the association of devotees, that is much more spiritually powerful and much more spiritually beneficial. Hari Bol. Jai Krishna Prabhu and Ushati Radha Mataji, Dandavats. So nice that you are here. Just saw your message. Hari Hari. So he began to travel like that. And as he was traveling from across the various places, he was always absorbed. Vidura was always absorbed in thinking of Krishna. He traveled through Ayodhya, Dwarka, Mathura, so many places. And wherever he went, he visited the temples. And in that way, he actually got spiritually enlivened. All these temples of the Lords are actually considered like representations of the Lord's spiritual dham in this world. The Lord is in Golok Vrindavan. All these temples are considered like personal extensions of the Lord's spiritual Lord, because the Archa Murti of the Lord, where a proper pran pratishtha is done by a pure devotee, is considered non-different from the Lord himself. Of course, the Lord kindly makes himself available in that form for us to worship. He's personally present, and that temple is practically like his abode. So just like in this world, in one country, there are embassies. For example, the US has embassies in India, in Malaysia, in Singapore, in UK, and so many other places. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in the spiritual world, has his embassies in this world in the form of his deity form and his temples. They are like representatives. They are actually his personal form, just like the ambassador is representing the government. And in fact, it is said that the High Commission is practically considered not different from the original country. Similarly, the temples in this world are actually considered parts of the spiritual world. So when we visit temples, the holistic experience of a temple includes taking darshan, offering seva, participating in kirtan, hearing Hari Katha, all these, and taking prasad. All these aspects must be there. Then it will be fully satisfying. So in that way, he traveled quite a bit. So we are almost close to 10. So what I will do is I'll take a pause here, because now the story takes a slight detour, because he reaches Prabhasa Kshetra, which is where the modern Somnath temple in Gujarat is located. And there onwards, there are some particular milestones in his journey which are discussed. So I think I'll pause here. I originally thought I'll be able to complete the chapter, but looks like it's going to take at least another one class. So never mind. So I'll take a pause here. So the journey of Vidura will continue. It's a very beautiful journey. And very soon in this journey, he's going to meet Uddhav. And when he meets Uddhav, a very, very wonderful conversation is going to happen. When two great devotees meet, especially after a long time, one must be very eager to hear what they both are talking about. It's very sweet. The loving exchanges, the loving interactions that great devotees have and what they discuss is actually full of so much learning and wisdom, and is very, very sweet to hear about and observe. It's very, very purifying. In fact, in the personality of great souls, whatever they do is actually so exemplary. How they react to situations, how they talk, how they interact, each and every word, gesture, action is actually reflecting their pure consciousness. It's so sweet, it's so wonderful. And there are so many lessons for all of us in it. So that is why these stories and these pastimes, even though at one level one may feel that from a story perspective there isn't a lot, but even in these small exchanges, small conversations, one can actually understand the consciousness of great souls and how they deal, and that is how we can learn. And that is why the best way to learn devotion is to be in the association of devotees. Because by seeing them, by observing them, one understands the kind of consciousness that we are expected to develop. We see how they deal with insults. We see how they deal with adversities. We also see how they deal with praise. Sometimes it's not all about negative things. How they deal with success. These are also very important lessons. Because the great devotees teach us in every situation what is the right way to respond, what is the right consciousness to maintain. So it's very, very wonderful. So if you are fortunate to get the association of such souls who have an evolved state of consciousness, and we have the good fortune of observing them closely and learning from them, then we are actually in a very, very fortunate position, and then we can make very rapid spiritual progress. And that is why the scriptures repeatedly say that the greatest benediction one can get is to get close association with those who are very attached to the Lord. That's a very, very great blessing. So we should all pray for this kind of a blessing, that we always get such association. If you see throughout the Bhagavad, all these great souls are actually praying for this blessing. More than saying that, oh Lord, give me entry into Vaikuntha, they are asking ultimately for that activity which they will do after they go to Vaikuntha or Goloka, which is to be in the association of devotees and to hear and chant the glories of the Lord. So we have reached actually verse 20 of the first chapter of the third canto. So next week we'll continue from the point where Vidura reaches Prabhasa Kshetra. And then we'll continue our discussion from there. Thank you very much. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Any questions? Any comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu. Yes.
Prabhu, I just wanted to what is that? Clarify on one point. You what is that saying that earlier that most of us should what pray that we have got association of a great devotees and so on. So if you see in the case of this the what Mahabharat war, okay, Krishna was present there. So like example, if we see some of this what is that Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana and so on, although Krishna was there, but they didn't accept whatever advice he what gave and so on. So so can we say that as far as this entire Mahabharat war is concerned, it's already destined by the what is that Lord, that each of us, I mean whoever is in there, they have been given this particular role so that although Krishna is there, they will still not be able to accept his teachings and so on. One, and also second is that sometimes this issue of the what free will comes in play. So how do you how do you how do you interlink between both these points, Prabhu? That one is that it's already been destined that uh, uh, it is already the plan of the Lord that it will happen, and then all those people there, they are supposed to play this particular role.
So yeah, so we should not we should when we say that finally the Lord is in control and the Lord knows what is going to happen, doesn't absolve a person of his free will. It's just that the Lord, he knows us so well, he knows how we will respond to certain situations. It doesn't mean that the Lord forces us to respond and behave in a particular way. Just like the mother who knows the child so very well can very safely predict in this situation how her child will behave, isn't it? Sometimes she will just say, "Oh, you see now what he will do? See, I've done like this. Now you just watch, come, see." And all others will say, "No, no, no, he'll not do like this. He'll not." No, no, you watch, you watch, you watch. And the child does exactly what the mother says. Because the mother knows very well. Does this mean that the mother has taken the free will away from the child? No. It's just that the mother knows the child very well. So in that sense, the Lord knows how people will act in a particular situation, and because of that, to facilitate Leela, he may create particular circumstances. Generally, for us to be able to learn the right lesson, we should see and learn from all the mistakes that all these personalities make. And that is the right way for us to look at it, rather than to try to trivialize it by saying that no, they all knew, but they were simply acting. Whether that is true or not is not for us to judge or conclude. The Lord may do that or may not do that. But the truth is that even for great souls, when they are in that particular situation, most of the times they are not even aware of who they actually are. Many things are done by them in particular situations, and the Lord also through those various situations shows to us how material nature is so powerful, how so many mistakes can sometimes happen because of the complexity of material nature. So material world is very complicated. Material environment is very complicated. Even with all good intentions, all good knowledge, things will still go wrong. That is why the Bhagavatam says, Padam Padam Yad Vipadam. So, most important thing is, sometimes what happens is when we try to apply this kind of a logic to pastimes of the Lord, then slowly we start extending the same logic to our own life. And that is the dangerous part. By saying, oh, they are doing as part of the Leela, I am also doing as part of the Leela. This is all the Lord's wish only that I am behaving like this. Otherwise, what else? Maybe this was destined to happen. Maybe all these people were destined to be destroyed. That is why Krishna used me as an instrument. Hari Bol, I am so glorious. So this becomes a very dangerous kind of an argument. So, how the Lord may use a particular person, the Lord can even use a sinful person who's doing a sinful thing by his own sinful will to achieve something glorious which the Lord wants. But that doesn't mean that the sinful person gets credit for it. No, he does not. The Lord just uses certain situations to achieve certain objectives. The key point is that everyone has free will. And the Lord doesn't interfere with the free will of the living entities. He may adjust certain situations and create certain situations for certain interactions to happen. Yes, that he may do. But in all circumstances, he doesn't compromise free will, one, and he is always just in all situations. He may sometimes be more merciful than being just, but definitely he is not unjust. Which means he may give us more than what we deserve, but he will not give us less than what we deserve. So how exactly he calculates, how he does, I don't think anybody can figure that out. Even Bhishma, they gave up. Even Brahmaji gave up. And nobody can figure that out. So we don't have to understand everything. We should just know that the Lord is perfectly fair, just, merciful, loving, and He knows what is best in all situations. And we should always think in all situations that I am fully responsible for what I am doing. That is more important. You get the point, Prabhu? Because exactly behind the scenes, what is happening, none of us will know unless the acharyas are very, very explicitly saying something. Yeah, like Jay Vijay, why they did what they did, that the Lord prompted them to act in a particular way. Yes, if the scriptures are saying very explicitly like that, we can understand. But we should not use this argument that it was the Lord's desire that this person do like this. And that is why he's absolved from whatever incorrect things he did. Did I answer your question?
Yes, yes, Prabhu. I think at the end of the day, I mean, as you said, I mean, whatever the Lord does, he is doing it in a in a in a in a fair manner, and He doesn't interfere with our free will. So end of the day, we have to be accountable in some sense lah to whatever we do, because because the free will, it is still given to us. So
Yes.
okay, Prabhu. Thank
So
you,
the
Prabhu.
thing is, sometimes when the Lord has already something planned in mind, I'm just giving you some examples, right? Let's say the Lord already wants to achieve something great. Let's say spiritually, He wants maybe 5,000 people in Kuala Lumpur to become Krishna conscious in the year 2020, for example. Okay. Then the Lord is definitely going to achieve that no matter what. Okay. He doesn't depend on Sudhir Sundar Das or Gaur Chandra Das or anybody else to achieve that. But if he sees that Sudhir Sundar Das, Gaur Chandra Das, and a few others are eager to serve him, then he may arrange and create situations for us to become instruments towards achieving that end. So the free will is still ours. The opportunity the Lord will give, the success the Lord will give, but the desire is still ours. You understand? So uh, So the Lord is very expert in adjusting and controlling circumstances. The key point is free will is paramount, and the Lord will generally not interfere with the free will. And in very rare circumstances, He does what we said, where He is directly influencing a particular situation or a particular person desire in a particular way. That is usually done for those who are fully surrendered, pure devotees, often those who have come down from the spiritual world. So we don't fit into that category. Okay. Raneshwari Mataji in the chat asked why Vidura didn't participate in the war, because he left. He left from, first of all, of course, he wasn't an active warrior in that sense. He was more a minister. He was a Dasi Putra. In that sense, he wasn't, a full-scale warrior. And also, he wasn't even present there during the war. In fact, he was on pilgrimage when the war had happened. In fact, what we are discussing, the story that we are discussing, until Vidura reached Prabhasa, he didn't even know that the war has happened and everybody has already died. All the Kauravas are killed. He didn't even know that. And we'll be discussing that the next week. Anything else? Any other question? Okay. So if there's nothing else, does anybody want to add anything or say anything more? Okay. By the way, it is Navratri starting, so it's also auspicious. Navratri, Sharad Navratri, leading up to the point of the Dasera festival, which is Vijayadashmi. So 9 days, Durga Devi, the external energy of the Lord, she's worshipped in her various form for 9 days. It represents the fight of good over evil, victory of good over evil. Durga Devi performs the seva on behalf of the Lord. She is the Lord's energy, and she is responsible for punishing the naughty children, those who are in the material world, the naughty. So when the mother deals with naughty children, she has to hold something in the something in the hand to punish. So she has the trident. Durga Devi has the trident. What is the trident? The trident has 3 prongs. What are the 3 prongs? Adi Bhautik, Adi Daivik, and Adhyatmik. 3 types of miseries. So she pokes the living entities with these 3 kind of miseries so that the living entity realizes, I should be a good boy, I should not be a naughty boy. That I should follow the laws which are created by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So she, in that way, she's a mother, she punishes with a good intention. But when the child becomes good boy and he becomes fit to go to the spiritual world, then the mother doesn't have to hold any weapon. She becomes like Lakshmi Devi, she becomes like Sita, she becomes like Radharani, who embraces the child and includes the child in the Leela of the Lord. So let us pray to Durga Devi also that she be kind to us, that she give us blessings, that we may also be able to remove all contaminations from our heart, and we learn our lessons well. The whole point of the punishment is not to pain us, it is so that we learn our lessons. If we don't learn the lessons, we have to reset the lesson. Correct? Just like a student in class, if he fails, what happens? He has to reset the exam. Study again, reset the exam. Again, until he passes, he will be poked with the trident. So if we want to not be poked, it is in our hands. It is not in Durga Devi's hands. It is in our hands. The sooner we learn, the sooner we escape from punishment. So let us pray to her that we are able to learn the right lessons. And all this suffering is actually ultimately meant for us to surrender at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the whole objective. So we don't have to go through the suffering. If we are intelligent, we will already assess the situation, understand the situation, and surrender straight away. Why wait for suffering? So nonetheless, we require her blessings. She is Mother, she is Jagdamba, she is the Mother of the whole universe. So by her blessings, we can also purify ourselves and develop devotion to the Lord. She is one of the greatest devotees of the Lord herself. And whenever the Lord appears, she also appears. When Lord Krishna appeared, she appeared as Krishna's sister. She is the same Devi who was born just before Krishna appeared, and she flew from Kamsa's hand, went into the sky. And then Krishna instructed her that you'll be worshipped in different places in different forms of Durga, in different parts of India, as Bhadra, as Kali, as Vaishnavi, and you'll be worshipped as my energy, like my sister in this world. And of course, the whole festival of Navratri culminates with Vijayadashmi, the most auspicious day, Ramchandra Vijayotsav. The Lord Ramchandra kills Ravan. This is the culmination of the fight of good over evil. So that is also a very, very important big festival. And that will be celebrated a little later in this month. Then, of course, very soon we are entering into Kartik, Damodar month, and then very auspicious, lot of auspicious festivals coming up. So, a lot of wonderful opportunities. So, let us use all these wonderful opportunities to purify ourselves and get closer to the Lord and make spiritual advancement. Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna. So I will see you all on Wednesday where we will continue with the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita.